Yeah, mix of cultures is one, but you see, especially the last years, that UEFA also invest a lot in legacy events and projects around that. And of course, if you want to do that in multiple different countries, then that will have a much more impact than when they have to decide to bring that back to either one or two venues in one country.
From Coordinate Sport, it's The Drive Phase, a show about sports founders, leaders and experts and the stories behind their business journeys. Our guest this episode is Hubert Rovers, founder and CEO of the European Football Development Network. He launched EFDN with the mission to tackle social issues through football and bring together European clubs to work together, share best practices and amplify the good work they all do. From just 7 founding clubs, EFDN has now grown to over 100. An influential fan of his hometown football club, he took his passion for creating events and engaging fans to a career in football community development. We discuss Hubert's early life and business ventures and how he has used his startup experience to launch and scale the network. Enjoy the show. Okay, so really excited to welcome Hubert Rovers onto the show today. He's founder and CEO of the European Football for Development Network, working to unite European football and strengthen the social impact of football on a European level, working now with over 100 clubs. So welcome to the Drive Phase podcast, Hubert.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. Where we normally start is just to get to know you a little bit better and look at kind of your early life and also look at how sport and I guess football played a part in that, coming up through kind of primary school and your earliest memories of sport and school.
Yeah. Oh, primary school, that's a long time ago. But yeah, well, football in that sense always played a role in my life. I've been practicing it myself as a young child first, but at 14, I thought that it was more important for me to watch than actually to practice it myself. So I'm a huge fan of the local football club here, Breda, which is a club that bounces between the top tier and second league in the Netherlands. And yeah, was brought there by my dad, as it goes with clubs like this. And that was basically my introduction into football, but then more the game itself.
So that's your local club, so born and raised in Breda, or was it?
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. I'm born and raised in Breda, which is a small town near the Belgian border in the Netherlands. Yeah.
Brilliant. And in terms of your family, were they, obviously your dad took you down to football, were they really sporty and I know we're talking about with the EFDN, kind of a community body as such, but in terms of business and entrepreneurialism, was that something that you got through your family or?
Yeah, my mom and dad are not supportive people at all. So that was more from school that was promoted. And of course, they wanted me to play football itself, but it was not that they were very active people themselves. Also because that they had their own business in hardwood floors for years and years. My grandfather was in that business as well.
Oh, so you've always known that, like as you're growing up, family business going on,
summer
job,
every weekend job, summer job, evening job after school. But no, so we were quite used to do things in the business, but at the same time you got the opportunity to become an entrepreneur yourself. So that part I really got from my family and from my dad special. But the football side came more. Yeah, because when I decided that football was a watching sport for me, I bought a season ticket holder and all my friends went. And basically every part of my social life next to school was around the football club. So, and from that year on, I really experienced how it is to belong to a football club or to be to that community. And while I was experiencing my school life with ups and downs, to be honest, that was always something that part of my life. And from that entrepreneurship that we got from home, I also started a big fan group at the club to promote positive atmosphere inside the stadium. And in the end, that turned out to be also the introduction to working for the football club later on as well.
So with school, obviously you said about 14, got into football and been a season ticket holder ever since, I guess. But how was school for you? Did you enjoy it or did you kind of...
Well, I was not the best student ever. And so I dropped out of school twice, to be honest. Once because the school didn't like me anymore. The second time because I was almost 18 and I thought I knew enough to conquer the world on my own.
Like most teenagers, right?
Yeah. So when I was 18, I started my own business, organizing house parties and festivals. In the beginning, went quite good, but after 3 years, the whole scene dropped down, and I realized that I was missing a degree. So the
What
only
was
way
that?
for me,
Just on that one, Hubert. What was that like? Obviously, 17, 18, drop out of school, start a business, especially in like parties and entertainment. Did you have any challenges doing that? Obviously, at your age, were you allowed to like get licenses or do? Or was it more of a?
From the age of 18, you're allowed to start your own business in the Netherlands, and the entertainment sector didn't require any diplomas for that. That's what they call in the Netherlands a free sector. So you can start without any educational degree in that area. So I started organizing events at 18, and again, that was really successful for the first 3.5 years.
These are
But
kind of
after
music, concerts, music, nightclub
yeah,
type
yeah,
events.
yeah, that kind of events. But after 3.5 years, the whole music scene where I was organizing events in went out of that was not, how do you say, it was not cool anymore.
Just taste changed, kind of. Yeah,
Yeah, it changed taste. Yeah, and so I lost a lot of money there in that area. And then
what type of music was it that you into?
yeah, it was house parties. So it was rave,
Got it.
1996 in the Netherlands. So yeah,
So
but
then, so switch that moved on. And what did you do after that? You moved into straight into
well,
football, or was it
no,
anything
no,
different?
no, no. Because at that time I realized that, without a degree, it's difficult to get somewhere. So the only way forward for me was go into the family business. And that's what I did. I became a sales representative for the business of my dad, selling hardwood floors for a couple of years. But because that was a long family tradition, we were more in the really traditional part where you have all kinds of stars and really traditional wooden floors. So expensive wooden floors as well. And with the whole new development of laminate flooring and buying it at a do-it-yourself store, my dad completely missed that change. So, and then he died in 2002. Then I tried together with my mum, we tried to continue the family business, but in the end, we said, okay, it's not really for us. My mum didn't want to continue. So we closed that down in 2005. And that was the time that I did all kinds of different things as a sales representative. And then in 2007, the club asked me if I was interested to become involved in their community foundation. Well,
Is this because you obviously at that time you were like a prominent member of the fan community,
yeah,
and that's how they kind of identified what you.
Yeah. Throughout the time between 2000 and 2007, I was a huge volunteer at the club because I had the experience of organizing events. I did the fan day and organized, well, most part of the fan day for the club as well. But we organized different events for fans throughout the season. So at one time, you had a new ruling in the Netherlands that you can only go to away games by a combined ticket. You had a ticket for the match and then also for a coach. You were not allowed to travel on your own anymore, which until then was common practice. So
where did that come out of? Is that kind of because of a specific event, or was it maybe trouble or something like that? Is
it
the fans?
Troubles between fans caused that.
Right.
And at that time, you had some large hooligan groups at Feyenoord, The Hague, the well-known Dutch clubs that had caused a lot of trouble. And an incident, I think 1998, between Ajax and Feyenoord really made that national policy that it was mandatory to buy a ticket for the coach or the train in the away stand. So we wanted to protest to that, but in a fun way. So what we've done is we hired, I think, about 10 limousines. And then instead of going by coach, we went by limousine with about 50 fans. We also went with 100 people by bike, which is really a Dutch way to do something. So we cycled 30 kilometers. One away game even won 100 kilometers with 10 people. We went by boat. We went walking 30 kilometers with 100 people. So we did all kinds of protests until that was not possible anymore. But it was a fun way for us still to do in a positive way, but still to have that you have an away feeling with the fans, but still could protest on one end. And at the same time, you had that away day feeling. But until that wasn't possible anymore, it wasn't accepted anymore after a couple of times. But we did
great marketing though, right? Marketing and PR for the cause, definitely.
Yeah, for the cause and for the club as well. And the club really liked it, facilitated a lot of that as well. And so, they always kept the tickets for the away stand, then for actions like that. But until that was banned by the FA, that wasn't allowed anymore. But we did different things on the stands as well. So we organized a lot of different choreographies, like the Tifo inspired actions.
Oh,
With
the big tifos, yeah, got it.
Yeah, big tifo banners and with holding up the cards in different forms and things like that. So I did that for 6 years as a volunteer, and because of that volunteering work, the CEO at that time said, well, perhaps he said, well, I've seen something on Match of the Day in England. And as it goes in football, he wanted to be, because in football, everyone wants to be the best, the first, the biggest, and so on. So he wanted to be the first community engaged football club in the Netherlands, because he saw something on Match of the Day where you have that highlighted foundation work. And then he said, well, I want to do a community street football tournament inside our city, bringing young kids from different neighborhoods together that usually don't mix with each other. And I've got a small pot of money for your salary for a couple of events, but only for 1 year, and the rest you have to do yourself. So if you make it, you run that pilot, you can stay. If not, then pilot is filled, and yeah, we don't have additional budget for that. Oh, and beyond that, he said, I also have a bit of money, and you have to get your project management degree. The club will pay for that, but only if you have sufficient money for year 2.
So you had to go out and basically, so you have to go and raise money for your salary at the same time, but then...
Yeah, so I had to raise money for year 2 or year 3 or for other events. And so that was an assignment. But at the same time, I had to develop that new project, but also had to study for that project management course. That was a mandatory part to stay another year. But
Got it.
in the end,
so you really shouldn't have, but essentially you would have needed the project management degree to get that role. But
no. So I got the role, but to stay in that role, I need to get the degree. Yeah, yes. And that is, for me, is in looking back, is the life-changing opportunity that I got. So because I developed a project with, well, the street football, the guidelines that he gave me were like 4 or 5 sentences. And I developed a project where it's a football tournament, but instead of only scoring points by winning the game, the kids can also scoring points by doing voluntary work inside their community, and also by fair play. They can win and lose points. Well, that methodology that I developed then in 2007 is delivered by 18 clubs in the Netherlands still. But in my role as EFDN, we're now doing that around Europe, from Ukraine to Chelsea Foundation are using that methodology to deliver programs. That became a huge success. I also got my degree, and I raised more than 100,000 euros for year 2, which allowed us not to do only that program, but also another one. And the reason why I was able to do that is because I thought, okay, the first person in a club where really no one understands what community outreach programs is or social responsibility in football is, because you're talking in 2006, really at its beginning stage in the Netherlands. What I did is I contacted West Ham United Foundation and Chelsea and Newcastle, Manchester United. And I basically told everyone, okay, I come from a very small club in the Netherlands. We are never going to play European football against you. We do once every 30 years. Our last one is 2001 against Newcastle, lost 5-0. And once every 30 years, we play that European game. But for the rest, we're never going to meet each other. But can I come over, learn from you how you organize things, and take that back to implement it in my own organization? And what I experienced is that although all these football clubs are really competitive on the field, off the field, they're really interested and willing to share, and to prevent that money and time is wasted to develop the same wheel all over again in Europe. So what I got back is from Tottenham Hotspur Foundation and other clubs in England, but also from Norway. I've got a 5-year strategy plan from one club. I got a project plan from another one. And what I did is I translated that not only from Dutch to English, but also from a big organization like Tottenham Hotspur Foundation to a smaller club like Breda. And then went into meetings with the municipality and with young people around the city to see what the actual need was. And the only thing that I needed to do is then check out which projects were already existing for the need in my city. And that made it possible for me to write a 5-year strategy plan for the foundation of Breda, which people could buy into. So the municipality really saw something that was new and unique for the Netherlands, but also housing associations, local businesses, and everyone really bought into that idea that the club has a lot more value than just winning the match on a Saturday evening, that our club really is a cool club to belong to if you are a kid that wants to play in the street football tournament or that wants to go to the study support center at the stadium or anything else. So that line of events and activities and chances that I got was for me life-changing, and I think a bit for the club as well. The foundation is still there. They have, I think, about 13 different programs still.
So over that period, obviously you brought that back and launched and I guess formalized it and developed it. What did it look like over kind of year, like year 3, year 4? What did you grow it to before you obviously moved on to stars?
Yeah, I left the club in 2013. And when I left, we had 14 different projects with 21 people of staff. And that was not 21 staff only from the club foundation, but we had 10 people working for the foundation itself. And then 11 people we had working either part-time or full-time, but they were actually employed by secondary or primary schools, secondary schools around the municipality. But their day job was to work in the study support center of Nakreda. So they were there daily, and we got about 1,000 kids a week in different programs, learning about numeracy, literacy, ICT, but all in developed curricula around the football club. So to teach kids the value of money, we went to the fan store, and they had like €100 budget, and what can you buy and what can you not buy, but also other exercises of, okay, you have €1,000,000, buy your best team that you can do with selling and buying players and stuff like that. So with the staff of those schools around the city, we had a full team of 21 people in total running community programs inside the communities itself, but a lot of the programs were inside the stadium as well.
I mean, just listening to the story so far, I mean, the couple of themes coming out, obviously, it's like that startup mentality, that entrepreneurship, as well as football being the running theme. I guess those two together, is that kind of what led you to see that opportunity to bring all the clubs together and form the EFDN and get things going?
Yeah, well, exactly, because I left Nakreda in 2013, but we had our first EFDN meeting in 2012 at Emirates Stadium at Arsenal. Then only with 6 people, because at that time, because I had that experience myself, that you could loan and exchange knowledge with different clubs from different parts of Europe. So we created at that time an EFDN meeting with this with the logo that we still have, as an idea from Nakreda to unite perhaps 5 or 10 clubs to meet once every 6 months, to apply for European funding together in certain areas, and that idea is really the starting point of what's now an NGO, a non-profit, since the 1st of April, so April's Fool, 2014.
I heard that one. Yeah, you've officially launched on the 1st of April.
Yeah, that was intended. Yeah, because after I left Nakreda, I worked for the Dutch Eredivisie, so the Dutch Premier League, for a year, to give advice to other football clubs. But my ambition was a bit bigger than that. Also because I really like to work with clubs, but only clubs that are really motivated to do this. And the problem if you work for a league is that you got 18 or 20 clubs, and you got 12 clubs that are really willing to do something, and then you got 2 that think, okay, maybe, but there are always 2 or 3 that have no interest in the topic whatsoever, and most of the time and the money goes into those organizations.
Trying to get the trophy, going for trophies and performance on the pitch, right?
Yeah, and so that was the part I didn't like. So I did a step back and looked, okay, what do I want to do with my life? And then I thought, okay, that idea from 2012, perhaps that's not a bad idea, to try to change the whole European football sector. And when I decided that for myself, well, the first one that I had to convince was my wife, and we had saved about €10,000 for a new kitchen, and said, well, I've got an idea. Instead of buying a new kitchen, I'm going to take that €10,000 to travel around Europe on my own, and try to convince football clubs to work together. And then, well, she was enthusiastic, of course, from the first second.
Yeah, right. I was going to say, how did that go down?
But no, so that took a while. But in the end, she said, well, if this is something that you really love to do, then you're allowed to use it. But I still want my kitchen, so at a time in the future. To give you an answer on that question, we bought it last year. It still has to be it still needs to be installed. but 7 years later. But she's getting her new kitchen. But no, and we'll use that. And then I went to a number of clubs and people in the sport for development sector, also UEFA and ECA. And I asked, okay, this is my idea. I really think that this is an underdeveloped part of professional football in Europe. And what is your idea on that? And then everyone said, yeah, it's really important, but it's not on our priority list. And I said, well, if it's not on your priority list, what do you think of an organization that comes from the clubs itself as a bottom-up initiative? And then everyone basically said, well, we think it's a brilliant idea, but that's not going to happen. So that's when I decided, okay, if I then have to start the foundation, let's do it on April Fool, because everyone thought that I was mad to try it. But we started with 7 clubs 7 years ago. And just 2 months ago, we welcomed a Dutch club as the 100th member. So we're now 108 members in total with 7 leagues and FAs as well from 30 European countries. So
what a few questions of that one. In terms of, I'm just curious, in terms of the first 7 clubs, was that the clubs you reached out to back in the day when you were starting out with the Community Foundation?
Yeah. So those 7 clubs were quite similar. I think 2 or 3 were different. Because I went to the clubs and said, okay, 2 years ago when I contacted you, this was an initiative that didn't cost you any money, but now if I want to start it as a foundation, I'm gonna ask a membership fee, because the things that we do cost money, and I only have that much myself. So we really started it from as a bottom-up initiative from those 7 clubs, paying a membership fee with the additional money that I had myself, and that was
which clubs were they? Which clubs were they? Were they all UK English clubs or?
That was Fulham, Tottenham were the UK clubs, and then we had Vålerenga in Norway, NAC Breda, Ghent in Belgium, Feyenoord Rotterdam, Wolfsburg, and Anastosis Famagusta from Cyprus.
Right, so you had quite a good, I guess, spread representation across Europe. It wasn't just UK and the Netherlands.
No. Yeah, we started with 5 countries, which was mandatory, but because we wanted to apply for European funding, and to get European funding, you needed to have at least those 5 countries.
So what did it look like in terms of, I was going to say, like you said, looking at funding, but you said there was a lot of, I guess, not negativity, but like the feedback was, it's not going to work, kind of thing. What was the reason? Is that just because of rivalry, or what do you think?
No. Well, if you, my ambition has always been big. So from the minute that we wrote the statutes of the foundation, we said that EFDN, the ambition is to inspire all professional football clubs, leagues, and FAs around Europe. That means 892 professional clubs, 29 leagues, and 55 national football associations, to become community engaged and socially responsible. So that has been our aim since day one. And when you start with an entity that no one knows, has 1 day of existence and 7 clubs, then people are going to think, well, how are you going to create from an office in the Netherlands? So we're not linked to UEFA, we're not in Brussels with the European Commission. How are you going to create that change?
Right, so that's like you got that big vision. I guess again, entrepreneurial vision. You can see what it's going to look like, but it might be hard for people to see it or believe in it when it's not there.
Yeah, and I think because my personal experience in that area, where people really wanted to share the information that they had, so the only thing that I needed to do is bring people together, and organize an event where people could share their information, organize an online platform where they could download it, the document. So what I did in the first years is I traveled throughout Europe, but also used LinkedIn and other social media platforms to reach out to clubs and said, okay, this is what we do. We know that there's no entity like us, because it's not like other organizations are doing the same thing that we do. And you can share on a European level, and people are really interested to share. So that our success really comes from our network members who provide the content. I always say when we have a new member in the network, our library grows because they have their own staff, they have their experiences, they have their own documents and materials and plans that they bring to the table. So what is available becomes wider and bigger for other people to see and to learn from, which they can use for local benefit and for local development as well.
Definitely. It seems like I guess it seems like a bit of a no-brainer to get involved. I mean, initially, was it like that? I mean, just to start out, you essentially going out, continuing with a sales activity, right? Trying to find the right people,
Yeah.
contact them, pitch them. Is that how it was, or did you? And
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, it was exactly that, and I know a lot, like you do in the sales
so I was going to say, yeah,
position.
was there resistance to it then at that point?
Well, not resistance, but as the minute you start, okay, you need to pay a membership fee to do that. People really need to see the value of that as well. And
Yeah,
I understand that certainly from a foundation perspective, that okay, everyone thinks there's a lot of money in professional football, which there is, but not in the community part and not in the foundation sector. So all these organizations really have to look after the money they spend. So I really get that if they want to if they needed to invest in a membership fee, that brings value back to the organization. And now that looks like a no-brainer. But when you only have 7 clubs or 8 clubs, then and we had a really small website and no funding success, and we only sold an ID. Then yeah, that I understood that took a bit more conversation and talks to get people buying into that ID. But in the first year, we had so we started in the 1st April. In December, we had the first 15 clubs in the network, which I thought was really good. And that grew substantially when we had number 19. And unfortunately, they're not a member anymore, but number 19 was Manchester United Foundation, which then participated for, I think, 2 or 3 years. And that was really the thing that we needed to convince other big clubs, because until then,
the influencer, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's the name as well, because until then we had Vålerenga, we had Anatosis Famagusta, we had Wolfsburg, Werder Bremen, which are also, they're not small clubs, but it's not like the Champions League that they play Champions League every year. So when Manchester United Foundation joined the network, that was for me also a lot easier to convince the clubs that we now have, like Barca and Paris Saint-Germain, Juventus, Inter, and so on. And with all of these bigger clubs coming in, it became a lot easier for people that on the other community foundations that really bought into the ID, but you have to convince then the manager as well to pay that membership fee. So when we had about 35, 36 clubs with a number of big names, it then became, from that point on, it became easier to convince the next club. And now with so many clubs in the network, it becomes a bit easier.
It's that momentum building, right? So
yeah. There's definitely momentum there. And now with COVID, we see that there's interest in this area, because I think, well, 99% of the clubs have really invested in their community during COVID times, because the fans were not allowed to come to the stadium. So a lot of clubs decided to bring the stadium or the club to the fans. So you see a lot of development and investment in this area, which also has caused that there is a wider interest to work on a European level, to share those ideas and to learn from each other as well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's the reason we do this podcast is to bring those thoughts and insights from across the sector. So for I'm really interested in kind of, like you mentioned there, it seemed like when you're with Brado initially, you've seen what's going on in England on Match of the Day, and it kind of what's the landscape across Europe in terms of, I guess, the maturity of the organizations in each country. I don't know if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
Is England and the Premier League ahead those clubs, or is it kind of
Yeah.
leveled out a bit now, or how's it look?
Well, I think it leveled out more than the English clubs would like to admit sometimes, but with a number of countries. But no, if you see the time frame, then of course the English clubs have a head start, and because of the investment through the Premier League, Community Trust, and that trickles down to EFL clubs as well. You see that investment, the annual investment, really makes it possible for English clubs to invest more in this area than it is possible in the Netherlands or in Belgium or in Germany. So yes, in a lot of areas, English clubs still are front runners, but at the same time, I also experienced that money sometimes makes lazy. And what I mean by that is that you see sometimes where an English club needs 2 or 3 different staff members to organize a project, that a club in the Netherlands or in Germany or in Belgium or in Norway or other Scandinavian countries runs the same program with someone that is only part-time employed by the foundation, but because of their partnerships that they have with schools or with the municipality or any other organization, they deliver a similar program on similar quality, but with a lot less investment from the community
So
foundation
they're able
itself.
to leverage that community they've got,
Yeah,
and the partners to actively participate. Yeah.
yeah. So having less money sometimes makes people more creative,
Yeah.
in a sense, and definitely also more open for working together. But yeah, but still, a lot of the programs that we disseminate throughout Europe have an English origin. So
Yeah, and it's kind of
and we're happy with that.
driving that innovation a bit. In terms of is there any countries where, um, I guess maybe not, but where it's just not on the radar for clubs to be active in the community or have that CSR or foundation
Yeah,
approach?
unfortunately, it's still too many. But no, you see that but it's definitely growing. So you see now that countries like France, Spain, Portugal are really catching up in this area. But in Middle and Eastern Europe, especially in Eastern Europe, this is still an innovative concept. But we have members like Ferencváros in Budapest, Hungary, but also Shakhtar Donetsk in Ukraine, that really adopted the model like we have it in the UK and in the Netherlands. And they're the innovators in that country, and they have success with that, in building fan base and really creating an impact in the community. But it also benefits the club in sponsorship and image, in building fan base, which then inspires the next club in Ukraine or the next club in Poland to do something similar. So we have a number of pioneers now around Europe in different countries, and that's also our model. If we can support those clubs to make it a success, where the balance between impact in the community and benefit for the own football organization is in balance, that we can inspire the next and the next and the next and so on.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose getting involved in the network means they don't need to make the mistakes that maybe they might have made if they were doing it all by themselves, or just kind of, and
Yeah,
they can draw on everyone else's experience. Right?
yeah. Well, that's the idea behind that sharing of best practices. But at the same time, you also have to realize, and I as well, that there's a lot of cultural differences between countries in Europe. So you cannot replicate everything. But if you can learn or borrow about 60 to 80% of a project, and then really look, okay, how am I translating this from not only language but also from a cultural perspective into my country, and you can say to the local municipality or to the national government, okay, this is a proven concept. This is not something that we think works, but this already works for 10 years or 15 years in the UK or in the Netherlands, or it works 5 years somewhere else. Then you have a really better proposal to get other people on board as well.
So, in terms of got the network, you got the online, I guess, portal to sharing a good practice and programs on there. There's some key ones that are they all from foundations, or is there anything that you're developing centrally and as programs for others to engage in? Is that
It's a mix between the two. So we ask every member if they are willing to share their documents and their plans. And we have a non-member section and a member section. So if you're not a member, you can still go to our website, EFDN.org, and go to resources and find a lot of the materials there. But if you are a member, then they have a separate login, and they can see about the double amount of documents where clubs say, okay, this is something that I want to share with another football club in Europe, but I don't want to have it on the open internet. But we have about 400 documents on the open one for non-members, and that's everything from impact reports to child safety safeguarding policies, but also a lot of documents that we developed ourselves by doing research amongst the network and by testing it in European programs if something works around Europe.
And some of the key programs I've seen, obviously for myself, obviously from our background and our business, we're sports tech. So the STEM program that I've noticed is with the robot football is really interesting. I don't know if you want to expand on that one or any others that you think might be relevant for some of the listeners to hear some of the great work you're doing.
Yeah. Well, I think the STEM program is a really interesting one because the one that we are developing now is based on Digital Blue from Chelsea FC Foundation. And they work together with an American company, Sphero, who developed the robot footballs. When other clubs saw that project, because they presented it at a conference, then everyone said, okay, wow, that's really great. We want to do something similar. But then we also realized that Legia Foundation from Legia Warsaw was really pioneering in this area as well. And they didn't have a robot ball, but they had an actual robot that played football. So they were working on something similar from a country where not a lot of people think that that's where the innovation comes from in our sector. So that was really interesting to realize that, okay, you got Chelsea on one side and Legia on the other one, and let's combine their experiences and then develop it together. So that's what we've done. We've built those together in one project, and then we found out that PSV Eindhoven also were developing a curricula in this area. And that's when we contacted UEFA Foundation. Okay, we said, this is a program from 3 different clubs. We think that if we combine that, we really have something that can be used all around Europe. And that one got funding from UEFA. We're now developing that with 10 clubs throughout Europe.
And then, so you're able to refine that and get it out across the network that maybe would never get that much exposure. So
because what that project does is that we can test if all those methodologies work in different areas around Europe, and create workbooks for kids, teacher manuals, and that's then becomes freely available on our website. So every club can download that for free and then change that into their club colors and club branding, and then deliver the program themselves as well, if they are interested to do that.
Definitely. You mentioned the conference there. Is that an annual conference that you do for all the members?
So so the conferences are 2 times a year. Usually they're in March. Now thanks to COVID, on 13th or 14th of April online. And then again, and I hope that can be an in-person event between the 8th and 10th of November. Those events are available for representatives of professional clubs, leagues, FAs, and their foundations, their community trusts. So they're not available for everyone. But if the clubs want to bring a partner, that's possible. So there's a lot of clubs that bring their partners that they work with a foundation or with the municipality. They bring them to the conference as well.
And with COVID, you've had to go virtual for that this year.
So
was that just this year or last year as well?
Yeah, last year as well. So we had one planned on I think it was the 21st of March, and then on the 13th of March, the whole country went into lockdown.
Yeah.
So we had to cancel that event. Then the November one, we hoped, a year ago, we thought, hopefully this is gone by November. How wrong were we? But
I think it's the same as everyone.
Yeah. So, so that we changed that one to an online one, and then we hoped, okay, perhaps at the end of May we can do an in-person one. But when the whole second wave hit around Europe, we decided, okay, let's not do that and keep it online for this time. but hopefully with all the vaccination programs around Europe and all the measures in place to make international travel possible again, we hope that in 8 to 10 November we can organize an event in the Netherlands.
Definitely. I think one of the things that's come out from obviously our recent interviews with leaders who are running global or international organizations, they've been able to, especially in the middle of the pandemic, they've been able to kind of see how it's developing across other countries and be able to either forewarn or let people know. Is that how it was working? If you go back a year, were you kind of seeing, right, oh, this is how it's developing in Italy, and you can kind of pass that on to other organizations? Was it that? Did you get any experience like that?
Yeah. Well, what we've done, I have to give credit to my team, because I had COVID, I think the end of March myself. So I was out for a couple of weeks, but the whole team then, because we were shut down as well, in lockdown like every other country, and then we saw the first initiatives of clubs doing COVID responses. So what we then agreed with the team is, okay, our role could be to create a platform where we can do what we know best, is sharing best practices. So we created supporterofeachother.org, and as a platform. And what we've done is we collected all those COVID responses from Italian clubs who had a head start, of course, and they experienced, well, to do food delivery and to do online sessions, but the Spanish ones as well, the countries that were hit very hard in the beginning. But you saw all these innovative programs and COVID responses coming up everywhere. And what we did, we combined them on our platform for everyone to read, to learn, and to share. And that helped a lot of other clubs in Europe to set up similar activities in that area also. So so that was our COVID response, is to provide that knowledge and disseminate that throughout Europe. But you see, and still you saw and still see that the things are a bit following up each other in different parts of Europe, where you go into lockdown, then schools open again, partially delivery in schools, online sessions. So I think for us to replicate that and to inform everyone how others are coping with all things, I think that's the biggest role that we had as an
Yeah, definitely.
organization.
It's invaluable, especially when you obviously really stressful time for organizations. If they can draw on that and know everyone's going through the same thing and can see what's working and not waste time doing things that don't work, be great. I guess you always have a vision for the organization. You kind of said it might have been slightly impacted by COVID, but what's the goal, like the medium term, like next 5 years for the organization? What you really driving towards?
Well, we have been founded and developed in the same four principles. So sharing knowledge, creating opportunities, improving impact, and creating visibility for the work that we do in general, and that the social power in European football, and for our members more specifically. That's also the aim for the next 5 years, where we want to inspire. For the next 3 years. So we said in 2025 we want to have 250 what we then call open clubs. So that's we consider an EFDN member as an open club when they are organizing activities not only in the community but also inside the stadium on non-match days, and really becoming a hub in the community where everyone, regardless of backgrounds, can find each other and use football, not only the game itself, but everything surrounding it, can use to make a positive impact in the community. And so that's quite ambitious. 150. So we did 100 in 7 years. So 150 in the next 4 is going to be a task, but that is our aim in the future. And we also hope that entities like UEFA and other governing bodies in Europe will invest more in this area as well. And they are already doing that. So you see a lot more new developments regarding football for all, in disability football, and power wheelchair football, and para football, and so on. So the game itself becomes more inclusive, but I think we really have to recognize that. I always say that football is the new church, and you really can use that as a powerful tool to really make a difference in local communities, but also on a European level.
I love that one. Football's a new church, definitely. Um, from my, I guess this is more of a bit more of a personal question for you. And I know you, when we're talking all your experience around event organization, starting up and launching things, have you developed any kind of business philosophies or leadership philosophies over the time that you tend to employ into the organization or to bring people together?
Um, Well, for me, working together with a lot of different people and organizations has always been a key to success. Where you try, well, and working hard, but that's something that I think is a no-brainer. If you really want to accomplish something, you have to believe in it and work hard for it. But in the end, you cannot do everything on your own. So you really have to build people around you that have the same beliefs as you, or that believe in the same thing, but that have different experiences that you perhaps don't have. Um, and building it, yeah, build better together. I think that's uh, my vision in that.
Definitely fits really well. I mean, my this is another personal question. In terms of the Euros, obviously cancelled the Euros last year. Um, I guess that's had a big impact. But in terms of this year, do you think that's something that's, I guess we're all speculating, do you think it's going to take place as it was? I guess the format hasn't helped in terms of that new
No,
innovative format of everyone traveling around different countries.
yeah, yeah. If you talk about having the right event at the wrong time,
Yeah,
but
like
yeah,
the worst format for a pandemic, right? Yeah,
yeah, indeed. So I'm not, yeah, I'm really not sure if they can do, if they will do that. I think UEFA will announce that around this period, what they're gonna do. Um, but yeah, I think if they continue with the original format that they had, I think it can really make a difference around Europe. But they have to see, if it can be done in a safe manner. If not, they will probably do something similar as the Champions League final or Champions League quarterfinals till
yeah.
final, and do everything at the same venues. That will have, of course, a financial impact for UEFA, but also I think a huge impact, or a lesser impact in European community, because all of these countries have, yeah, you're building up to use such an event as an inspirator, as something that you
And
can
that's,
use.
yeah, because like all the things you used to do, like you were alluding to previously, all that stuff's like the massive impact, the fan parks and the kind of the
Yeah,
mixture of cultures together is the biggest thing about those tournaments, isn't it? So
yeah,
to
yeah,
miss out
yeah.
on
Well,
that.
yeah, the mix of cultures is one, but you see, especially the last years, that UEFA also invest a lot in this in legacy events and projects around that. And of course, if you want to do that in multiple different countries, then that will have a much more impact than when they have to decide to bring that back to, yeah, either one or two venues in one country.
Definitely. Last question for me, and I always ask this one in terms of, and I might know the answer already. If you could go back to I guess your teenage self, then an 18-year-old who left school, if you could go back and give yourself some advice. I know you mentioned as a teenager you could take on the world and knew what to do. Maybe it might be stay in school a bit longer or something. But what would be your advice if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice before you started out in your career?
Yeah, well, this definitely is going to stay in school and get your degree. That would be my first. But I think the other one is that, yeah, where I'm at now is also true, and a follow up of events of success and failure. So don't be afraid to make a mistake. And I've been, so I dropped out. I went into, well, close to bankruptcy at that time with the event organization. And that were all mistakes, but that also builds in the experience builds your suitcase of experiences that you can use in later life. So on one side, be smart and stay in school. But also, if you do make a mistake, learn from it and invest all your time and energy in the next success or in the next activity.
No, I love that, and definitely in terms of the growth of the organisation, the flywheel is definitely going now. So I'm sure getting to that 250 clubs will be a lot shorter timescale than the first 100. So, Hubert, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Thanks for the insights and sharing with the listeners.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's show. You can subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can write to us at dryphase.podcast@coordinate.cloud, tweet us at coordinatesport, or follow us on Instagram at coordinate_sports, or on my account at James_ventures. This episode was produced by Nancy Kwamboka, with support from Claire Goodchild and Lola Small, with special thanks to Rochelle. I'm James Moore, and you've been listening to The Drive Phase from Coordinate Sport.